The Fitzwilliam Museum, a veritable temple of the arts. Its Greco-Roman facade evokes the grandeur of an ancient temple and tantalizingly hints at the revered objects that lie within. Today we're here to untangle a couple of the myths it holds. More than anything, the Fitzwilliam is a powerful storehouse of stories that provides visitors with a shared visual experience. And the stories begin even before you enter the museum. Just look at Athena presenting Pegasus to the Muses and the triangular pediment above. And the stone lions that guard the entrance have their own story to tell. According to local legend, they leave their plinths at midnight to roam around the museum like connoisseurs of the animal kingdom. The feeling that you're entering a ceremonious space doesn't stop when you enter the museum. The entrance hall is a 19th century explosion of love for the classical. Behind me are two caryatid statues supporting the Corinthian portico that will finally lead us into the galleries of fine art. This is the prologue before the real stories begin, and today we're going to be zooming in on two portrayals of myth in particular that represent very different sides of love. We're joined now by Dr Oldfield, an art historian from Cambridge University. This is such a colourful and busy work, I don't know where to look first. And this mysterious figure in white keeps appearing. What's the story?
Well, it is a story which is really quite difficult to follow because there are about 15 episodes, all contained in one panel. It tells the story of Cupid and Psyche, which is one of the more popular ancient myths. Essentially, it's a love story between the god of love, Cupid, who you see appearing in the sky there. This is at the moment when he actually falls in love with Psyche, and she's always in white, so you can always follow the story via her appearance. And she's the key to this panel, more so than Cupid. It's in a sense a story about Psyche being one of the most beautiful women in the land, has many suitors, but doesn't want to marry any of them. So her parents take her to the temple of Apollo. They're instructed to let her go, and eventually she makes her way to the top of a mountain. She's blown by the mountain down onto this grass where she falls asleep. When she awakes in front of this magnificent palace, and she enters the palace. All the servants are invisible. She only hears voices. It's a very strange palace in this way. And equally, at night, she is visited by someone else who's invisible. Now, it happens to be Cupid, yes, but the key to the story is that she's never allowed to see her lover, Cupid. But she gets lonely. You can understand that, on her own in this palace, can't even see her lover at night. So she makes a request that her two sisters can come and visit her. And they do, and they go away with presents. These are the two sisters there. But they're really quite jealous of Psyche's good fortune. And so they persuade their sister to find out who her secret lover is. And she does, one night, holds a candle over Cupid. And sadly, a bit of hot wax drops on him. He wakes up. He realizes he's been betrayed by Psyche, who has promised not to have a look at him. She has. And he flies away in anger. Like a cartoon strip, the artist has deliberately given you different settings, different landscape locations to help divide one episode from the next.
And was this way of representing a narrative common at the time? When was it painted?
Well, it's particularly popular, I suppose, from about 1420 up to 1500. Later on, the game is to show a mythological tale in one episode and to refer to other aspects of the narrative through that one episode. Here, they're quite happy to tell it in 15. But in addition to its narrative interest as a mythological love story, clearly the message, I suppose, for a 15th century person is that the moral of the tale is that a woman should never, ever distrust her husband, because if you do, it will lead to all sorts of calamities. Essentially, this is actually saying, or giving the message that the woman should trust the man regardless. And that's led, I think, to this panel being possibly intended for a marriage chest, something like this down below, for instance. Possibly. And yet it's so large and there's so much detail, I wonder whether, in fact, instead of being for a marriage chest, it actually would have been a decoration, a wall panel, for instance. I think it's fun. I think it's about marriage. It's about loyalty. It's about all those things, really. And also, I think it's showing off someone's classical erudition. Because you'd actually have to know the story of Cupid and Psyche to really appreciate all the details that are here. Well, this is telling the story of the moment when Mercury turns a Glauris into stone, and that's what's happening here. There's Mercury with his winged hat. There's this caduceus, which he's touching the back of the neck of the Glauris is with, and she is turning to stone. You can just make out her left arm being much grayer than the rest of her body. The reason why he's turning a Glauris to stone is that she's preventing him from seeing and indeed having his way with her fair sister Herse, who is here on the right. Even though Glauris had promised Mercury previously, she is filled with envy thanks to the intervention of the goddess Minerva. So instead she's being punished by Minerva, and here Mercury is turning her into stone. A highly unusual story actually to find in the history of art. I mean, Cupid and Psyche is really very common. This story, highly unusual. It's a very strange story to choose. I mean, this is the moment when a Glauris is turned into stone. So it's about punishment for not allowing Mercury to have access to Herse. Perhaps a bit like Cupid and Psyche, in a sense the way that Psyche is misled and sense betrayed by her evil sisters. There's maybe something to do with that in this picture. Like Cupid and Psyche, of course, it's a story between the love of an immortal god, Mercury, for a mortal Herse. So there is that part of the meaning which one should have in mind, just as there is a Cupid being the god and Psyche being the mortal. But according to Ovid, he actually never does make love to Herse. I mean, he just leaves after he turns her to stone. So presumably doesn't go any further into the room. It's about punishment. It's telling a mythological tale, but there may have been an allegorical reason, i.e. jealousy, might have been the underlying vice which this is portraying. In other words, there's a mythological way of telling you about the vice of jealousy and envy, possibly.
What marked this change in the development of Italian Renaissance painting? Because this is so much more naturalistic.
Well, it is, and we are a good 100 years on now. I mean, the Cupid and Psyche, circa what, 1480? This is circa 1580, 1570, 1580, so a good 100 years on. By this point, the game for artists like Veronese is to tell a mythological tale in just one episode, and possibly referring to previous and post episodes to connect with the story. Clearly, Mercury is just coming in from the left. A Glauris, rather serpent-like and snake-like, is on the floor, trying to prevent him from going in. In a sense, her evil is almost represented by her very pose and where she is on the floor there.
Great, thank you so much, Dr. Oldfield.
Pleasure.
Thank you. The Fitzwilliam is a theatrical stage upon which such narratives take place through the eyes of artists like Solaio and Veronese. The paintings are windows into other worlds that are ancient and strange yet familiar. Both artists communicate their story in dramatically different yet equally affecting ways. And the museum itself is a vessel of shared cultural memory that fixes such scenes forever in our mind's eye.